If you want to run a local model that is free, private, and capable of connecting to all of your external tools like Google, Notion, Facebook ads, you name it, anything that you want, then keep watching this video. What I'm going to show you how to do here is how to run a capable local model on your own machine, but more importantly, how to connect it to external services so that you can get the same tool use and advantages that you would by using something like Claude or OpenAI, but completely for free, completely private, and secure on your own machine so you control everything. With that said, let's get into the video. Okay, so the way that we're gonna do this here is we're gonna use Ollama. I'll talk about how to install it and set it up. We're gonna use a capable model. We'll discuss the criteria for using that in a second. And we're gonna use something called the Zapier MCP server. This allows you to connect to over 8,000 different integrations. It is free to use. You can just create an account and you can set it up. And this means that all of your integrations can be handled in one place and you just connect a single MCP server to Ollama, which again, I'll explain to you how to do. And then you're good to go and you can run a local model and effectively do anything you would with the better ones. Now, there are a few things that you should understand before doing this, so let me quickly go through them. Now, first, I'd like you to understand the difference between an LLM, a large language model, which is kind of what we've been talking about, and an AI agent. Now, an AI agent is something that's capable of actually taking action, and the way that it does that is by calling various different tools. An LLM, or a large language model, is just kind of a standard chatbot. What it's capable of doing is predicting text, in some cases calling tools or generating videos, images, etc. But what allows it to do that is you connecting it to something external. So if you just have, ChatGPT, or you have, Claude or Anthropic or some base model, whatever, if you don't connect it to anything, it can't really do anything. It can just give you some text back. Now, the exact same thing applies here when we're running these models on our own machine. It's very easy to run a local model on your own computer. You can type with it, it can give you a response back, that's cool, but we want to add that tool layer so it can actually take some actions and be useful to us. So that's the key difference. The LLM is kind of like the brain. It can chat with you, it can do things, but what allows it to do something is connecting it to these tools. So when we make that connection, now the LLM goes from a chatbot to something that can actually go out in the real world and take actions on your data, which makes it extremely valuable. Okay, so in terms of setting this up, first thing we need to do is download and install Ollama. I'll leave a link to it in the description, but you can probably find it faster. It's ollama.com. What you're gonna do here is just press the download button, download it for your operating system. And if you already have it, I'd recommend just updating it. You can do that by running this command right here in your terminal, okay? Now, once you've got Ollama installed, go ahead and open up a terminal or a command prompt. If you're on Mac like me, you can just search for terminal in the Spotlight search. If you're on Windows, go to the Windows search and search for PowerShell or for CMD, or even now I think they've called it terminal as well. Doesn't really matter, just open it up. From here, you're gonna simply type Ollama like so. Let's zoom in and just make sure that this is working. Okay, now if it's your first time running this, you may need to just make sure that Ollama is started on your machine. To do that, you can also just search for the Ollama application and just double click to run it, and then it should run in the background. Okay, so once you've run Ollama here, you might see a screen that looks something like this, where it says like, oh, launch these different things. This is like a brand new update they just released. For now, to get out of it, you can just hit escape, because we're gonna kind of pause on this for a second, because what we need to do is find the model that we wanna run. Okay, so from here, if you wanna see a list of models that you can possibly run, just go to this models tab, and you can see there are a ton of different ones, and you can start searching through them. And this is where we need to talk about kind of realistic expectations. The type of model that you can run on your computer really depends on the performance of your machine. And the main thing that we're focused on is the graphics processing unit, or CPU, that you have depending on your operating system, Mac versus Windows, and the amount of RAM that you have. Now, what I'm about to tell you is pretty much exclusively for newer devices. So I'm talking about in the last like 4 or 5 years. If you're running a much older machine, you still can run these local models, but you're gonna be really limited in what's possible just based on the current architecture of like the old devices versus the new devices. So if you're running a newer Mac on any M series chip, then you should have unified memory. That means that the RAM available to your computer is also available to your graphics card, or graphics processing unit, whatever you want to call it, or whatever Apple is calling it now. So if you have 32 gigs of RAM on your machine, then you can run models that utilize maybe like 70 or 80% of that RAM. Now, if you're on a Windows machine or a Linux machine, it's unlikely that you have unified memory. Actually, I don't even know if that's possible on Windows. I don't know the current architecture, but what I do know is that usually you're gonna have these models running on your graphics card. So if you have a 4090, for example, then you should have 24 gigabytes of VRAM. Now, this is the memory that's exclusively available to your graphics card and can be used for running these models, and the models can use pretty much all of that. So if you're on Mac, what you want to look at, because you need to know your amount of RAM, is, okay, how much RAM or unified memory do I have? If you don't have unified memory, you're looking at the memory for your graphics card. And if you're on Windows, you're almost exclusively looking at the memory for your graphics card. If you don't have a graphics card, you can still run these models, but they're going to be extremely slow. So you can always run these models assuming you have enough hard drive space. It's just a matter of like, are they actually usable and do they give you any kind of output that doesn't take like 5 hours to run? Because you can run them, but they're just gonna be really, really slow if you don't have enough RAM. And the reason for this is that typically you load the entire model and all of its weights into the computer's memory. So this is what we're focused on. Again, if you're on Mac, it's a little bit easier for you because you just look at the RAM amount. If you're on Windows, you need to know your graphics card, the amount of VRAM, and again, newer devices are just going to perform better. So with all of that said, when we choose a model here, what we need to be looking for is one that's capable of tool calling. If I just search for like the Llama model here, and I'm using like an outdated model, something like Llama 3, you'll see that Llama 3 doesn't indicate that it has the ability to call tools. So if I download this and use it, okay, cool, but I can't actually call any tools with it, so it's just not really usable, right, for doing the integrations. Now you can use it as a chatbot, but that's about it. So when you're gonna pick your model, you wanna pick a model that has this tools ability. So the one that I'm gonna use in this video is Gwen 3.5, very good, new model, updated 2 weeks ago. And you'll notice that when you start looking at these models, they have a ton of different options. So if we scroll down, you'll see we have one that is 8 billion parameters, 2 billion parameters, 4 billion, 9 billion, 27 billion, sorry, this is 0.8 billion. And the number of parameters directly ties to the space that the model is going to take up on your computer in terms of storage space, but also in your RAM. So the more parameters, the better performing the model is going to be. However, the more difficult it's going to be to run. So when you're selecting the version of the model, and let's say you're using Gwen here, you need to be conscious of how much RAM you have available for the model to use. Now in my case, because I have 32 gigabytes of RAM on my machine, let's just quickly show you about this Mac, and this is unified memory on an M2 Max like MacBook here, I can use most likely the 35 billion or the 27 billion parameter model. The 122 billion one, I can still use it, but it's going to be incredibly slow and just not practical to run because it uses 81 gigabytes, which means in order for it to be efficient, I would have to load all 81 gigabytes into RAM, and my RAM is also still being used by some other processes on my machine. Okay, so that's what you're paying attention to. I'm just explaining that because the model selection is the most important part. For most of you, running like a 9 billion parameter model will work. Again, it's not going to perform as good as Opus 4.6, but it will still give you decent performance and do some basic things that you need. So the more hardware you have, the richer you are, right? The better models you can run. But that's kind of how it works. And again, if you wanted to connect to something else, like a tool, you need this tool calling ability. If you go look at the models list, a lot of them now do have the ability to call tools or to do thinking or all of these different things. So check those out, okay? And Gwen 3 Coder Next is also a good model that's a little bit lighter that you can run as well on your own computer. Okay, so now that we know the model that we want to use, what we can do is we can type Ollama pull and we can just go find the name of the model. So mine, I'm just going to go with maybe 35 billion and I'm going to paste this here. So Gwen 3.5 colon 35B. Pull is now going to pull the manifest down and download the entire model and all of its weights. This is going to take a long time. Well, in my case, my internet is actually incredibly fast here, which I'm surprised by. But you can see it's downloading 23 gigabytes. So I'm going to wait for this to finish. Once it's done, I'll be right back. And then we're going to start running the model, and then I'll show you how to connect the tools. All right, so this just finished. And now the first thing I want to do is just quickly test the model. So to do that, I'm going to type Ollama run and then Gwen. And this is going to be 3.5 colon 35 billion. And then this is just going to run it directly in Ollama. I'm going to show you a better way to run it in 1 second, but at least this will allow us to test it. Should take a second to load. Again, it does need to load up RAM here with all of the weights. And then as soon as it does that, we can start chatting with it and get like text-based responses. Okay, so I just gave it a random prompt like, hey, tell me what you're good at doing. And let's see kind of the response time that we're getting here from the model. Again, the larger the model, typically the slower it's going to be on your machine, unless you have like a really fast, good machine. And in my case, you can see this is taking a while, so I probably downloaded a model that was a little bit too large for the specs that I had. Again, this one I believe is using 24 gigabytes of RAM. If I go down to the 27 billion parameter one, I'm more at like 17, which is a little bit more manageable. So if this takes too long, I'll switch over to the other one. Anyways, just want to show you the reality here. I don't really know exactly what's going to happen. You have to kind of test it out and see which models actually work on your machine. Okay, so trying to run the other one wasn't really working. I wasn't getting any response after like a minute. So I've just switched to use the 27 billion parameter model, which now is fine. It also doesn't help that I'm recording a video right now. And you can see that it's giving me its live thinking process where we have quite a few tokens per second as the output. Now again, this is going to take a second to run, right? It's going to be slower than you running it in Claude, but the point is you're running it on your own machine, and that's a huge advantage. So you play around with the different models to determine what it is that you actually need. So it's doing this whole thinking process. Hopefully it's going to give me, like a valid answer here in a second. But generally speaking, it's working. And now we can move on to the next step where we start doing the integrations. Oh, and there you go. Okay, it's giving me the answer as we speak. And I mean, that didn't take too long. That's pretty decent, and it looks like it's giving me a pretty comprehensive answer, so it's not just like a super basic model. All right, so continuing here, let's now go to the tool integration component. Now, in order for us to actually run MCP servers inside of Ollama, we need to use something called the MCP client for Ollama. Now, there's a few other tools and abilities to do this, but Ollama does not natively support MCP. So effectively what we need to do is use something called a bridge, which is going to connect to the MCP server, discover the tools, and then share those with Ollama in real time and just act as a proxy for doing the tool calling and getting the results. Now, the best one that I found is MCP Client for Ollama. I'll leave a link to it in the description. Of course, it's open source and available. And I'll just show you the commands you need. You don't need to read this whole thing. Now, in order for us to use that, like I mentioned, we do need to use the Zapier MCP server. Again, massive shout out to them for sponsoring this video. This is free to use. The way that it works in terms of pricing is that yes, if you do use it a massive amount, you will need to pay for it, but it lends the same actions from your Zapier plan. So if you're familiar with Zapier, it's very popular for automations. I use it in all of my businesses, and it does something called zaps. So it like zaps an automation or zaps something to a platform, and each one of those zaps is like one credit, right? Or yeah, one zap. So when you use the MCP server, every time you use it, it just acts as like one zap towards your plan, which is totally fine. And you can get, like thousands of them for free effectively without you having to pay anything. So the way that this will work is just go to this link, I'll leave it in the description. And what you can do is just press get started. When you do that, it should bring you to a page that looks something like this, where it shows Zapier MCP. And you can see like the number of tasks, right, that are being used and that I've currently used so far. Now from here, what we're going to do is go to new MCP server. From the MCP server, we're just going to select other, but you also could connect this to any of the other AI agents that you're using. So it doesn't just need to be, what am I using here? Ollama. Okay, so I'm going to go other because this is Ollama and they don't just show that on here. From here, I'm now going to connect some different tools that I have. So for tools, let's go ahead and connect something like Notion because that's like pretty visual and easy to see. And I'm just going to select all of the tools and just make them all available, but you can obviously safeguard which ones you want. So I'm going to go ahead and now connect my Notion account. It's literally as easy as just using the OAuth, and then all of the security is handled for you. So what I'm going to do is just connect it to my personal account so that I don't really care if it does something wrong. So let's just connect it to new page and this second channel page, and maybe this December 2025 travel. You can see I have just all my travel stuff in here. So let's just select all of it, and at minimum, it can maybe summarize some of the stuff that we have inside of here. Okay, so Notion is now connected. Editors, please just make sure you're blurring my email there. Let's add all of the tools here now to this MCP configuration. And just because we're at it, we can just add another one. So let's add something like, I don't know, there's literally 8,000 of them. So you kind of just have to figure out what you want, and then you can start searching them to find anything. Like, I don't know, do they have meta? Let's see here. Yeah, they have like 100 meta things. Okay, let's try maybe Google Calendar. And let's just same thing, select all, connect, and let me just connect it to one of my accounts. All right, so I've got that connected. Obviously, I can go crazy and add as many of these as I want, but for now, we'll just stick with these two. And now if we want to actually connect this to Ollama, we're going to go to this Connect tab here, and we're going to generate a new token. Now, when we generate the token, we've got to make sure we save this, and obviously you don't want to share it with anyone else. So you can see there's a full URL with the token. This is the one that I want, so I'm going to copy that. But you can also just connect, through a standard MCP configuration using the authorization header. a few different ways. Depending on the tool you're using, you'll use a different one, but we want the URL with the token, and we're just gonna save that. So put that somewhere safe because we're gonna use that in 1 second. All right, so as I mentioned, the next step here is we're just going to install this Ollama MCP client connector thing so that we can actually connect to the MCP server. So in order to do that, you can do this directly with pip. So pip install upgrade OLLMCP. Then you can run OLLMCP. You can also do UVX OLLMCP, or you can run this installation step right here. So for most of you, running it through pip is probably going to be the easiest. And the way you do that is just make sure you have Python installed on your machine first. Okay, now from here, there's a ton of configuration options once you've got this installed. I already installed it, but effectively all you would do, right, is just run this pip command or run this UVX command. I'll leave the link to this in the description in your terminal. So you just go here, right, if you have UV installed, and you go UVX and then OLLMCP, and it should just run, right, and install all of the dependencies, and you should be good to go. Now, once that is installed, okay, so it's spun up and you can see by default it's using Gwen 2.5. I'll show you how we change the model in a second. Let's just quit so we can get out of that in the meantime. There's a bunch of options you can use to run this. So you can do, dash MCP server, where you're specifically specifying an MCP server, which is what we're gonna do. You can do auto discovery, where it's gonna look in your Claude's configuration actually, and then you can specify the model, the host, the version, all of that fun stuff. So what we want to do is we just want to specify the model and the MCP server. So I'm just going to show you the command to do this, and then we can run it. Okay, so effectively we're going to run OLLMCP --MCP server URL. We're going to take our server URL. I just stored it in my browser, which I know is horrible, but for the video, that's fine. And I'm going to paste this in. So put the URL including the token. So we've just done that. And actually, I believe we need to put this inside of quotation marks instead of double quotes, just so it identifies this as one argument. So let's do that and go back here. And then we're just going to specify the model that we want to run, and it's going to run an Ollama-like environment for us. So we're going to go -- model, and then Gwen 3.5 : and then 27B, or whatever parameter version you are using, and go ahead and hit enter. So again, Ollama MCP -- MCP server URL, put the server URL you want to connect to, -- model, and we're good to go. You can connect to multiple servers if you want for MCP. However, if you have Zapier, you just need one because it connects to all of them by default. Okay. So we're now going to do that. It's going to try to connect to this URL. You can see it's connected. It now has access to these various tools. It's also in thinking mode, and you can see that you can change a bunch of stuff here. So if you want to change the thinking mode configuration, you can type TM. If you want to show the thinking, ST. If you want to show the metrics, SM. If you want to view the various tools, type tools, right? So let's type T, and we should be able to see all of the different tools here, and you can see it's exposing all of the tools that we connected with the Zapier MCP server. So I'm just going to press Q to get out of that, okay? And it's going to bring us back here, show us that we're in thinking mode, and let's try something basic. Can you tell me where I was traveling in the last year based on my Notion documents? Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and press enter, and you can see that it begins to work, and now it should hopefully connect to our MCP integrations, start calling and using those tools, and giving us the result. Okay, so you can see it's actually prompting me if I want to enable the tool call. You can see that it's going to go travel and start searching in Notion to find this page by the title. So let's go ahead and type Y. Now again, I'm not going to lie to you. This is slow. It's not speedy execution. You're going to sit here for a little bit, but this is the kind of trade-off when you're running on your own machine. If I had a really high-end machine, which by the way, I'm considering buying soon because I can just run a ton of local models, this would be a lot faster. I can use a better parameter model, but also I could just go down to like the 9 billion parameter model, and then this is going to be lightning fast. I might get a little bit less accurate replies, but that's the trade-off. So play with them. Let me know in the comments down below, but let's wait for this to finish and make sure it can actually kind of do what I'm saying. Okay, so to take a second here, there was a lot of tool calls that it ran through, but it was able to get all the content. And we can see now that it has all of the details here, and it's starting to show where I was traveling, what flights I was taking, all of this kind of stuff that I was doing back in December 2025. So it was able to go through Notion, it was able to do that. Let's quickly test one with the calendar, and then I want to show you how we can do this from code. Can you create a new booking today at 4 to 5 p.m. that is just a time block saying eat lunch in my calendar? Let's just test something simple and just see if it can like take the action rather than just reading some content. Let's test it. Okay, so it's telling me here that it did create the event. Let me go check my calendar and see if that's true. Okay, so I did find it. It is at 4 to 5 a.m., not 4 to 5 p.m. So let's just tell it to fix that. Hey, the event's at 4 to 5 a.m., move it to 4 to 5 p.m. Okay, probably just based on how it called the tool. Again, we're not using the best model possible, but if we scroll through here, we can see all of the stuff. And I'm also guessing that maybe this is a time zone issue because it's probably doing this in Eastern time, which my calendar is set to, and I'm currently 12 hours ahead of that. Okay, so it probably actually did do it at the correct time. It's just in the wrong time zone awareness area. So anyways, we'll skip this. For now, I want to go over to the code. I want to show you how we can do this inside of code as well, not just from this kind of terminal environment, in case you want to run a local model through something like Langchain. All right, so I've just opened up Cursor. I've got some code here. I just had Claude Code generate this, so it's probably a more optimal way to run it. But effectively, I just wanted to show you that from code, you can just directly connect to Ollama because Ollama exposes a REST API server. And then from there, if you want to use an orchestration framework like Langchain, you can really easily connect to an MCP server. So you can see like I've defined my Zapier MCP URL. I define it as a client. I then just create a React agent using Langchain here. I think there's a newer version, but this one works just fine. I get all the tools, pass it there, and then I can just start chatting with my agent directly inside of code. So if you're building a product, you want to run a local model, you have high enough hardware, you can do it really easily. I just have a few packages, right? Langchain MCP adapters, Langchain Ollama, LangGraph in Python. You can do it in any language you want. And you don't even have to use these packages. They're just an abstraction on top of the HTTP server or REST API that is exposed. So you can just directly call Ollama, call your model, and then connect it up to the MCP server like I'm doing right here. So I'm just running it, and I'm just going to go like, actually what calendar events do I have in the next, 5 days? Okay, and let's see what it gives us. Okay, so same thing, it's a little bit slow, but I got the response back here. You can see there's a bunch of data. I'm gonna have to blur some of it because there's some custom stuff. So editors, please just blur any of the important information, but effectively it summarized all of the meetings that I have coming up here, and these are accurate based on what I know about the calendar. There we go, guys. With that said, that's gonna wrap this up. This is super powerful, relatively easy to do. Yes, there's a few commands and setup, and once you get it, it's pretty much just plug and play. And this is a huge unlock if you want to run something locally or you want to build anything that relies on local models. Again, play with them, try out different models, see what kind of speed, accuracy combo you can find. Let me know what you think of the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.